What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be looking at wide receivers in Dynasty Fantasy that have some value at where they are currently ranked. I'm looking at Keep Trade Cut, but there's a lot of very good resources for Dynasty rankings. This is just the one that I've been using to make this video. The first receiver we're going to be looking at who has, I think, a ton of value in terms of where he is ranked currently on Keep Trade Cut, who is at wide receiver 15. 26 years old, still young, and heading into a free agency season is T. Higgins. There's a lot of rumblings that he is going to be staying in Cincinnati, but even if that happens, I think is a really good value play. He came in at the end of the season as wide receiver 6 in a fantasy points per game, behind only Amon-Ra, Jettis, Puka, Chris Godwin, and Jamar Chase. And obviously, that alone should be enough for you to invest in a guy who's ranked as the wide receiver 15. But seeing as though he has the potential to, find a new team this offseason and become an alpha receiver on an offense where he is the only guy getting this massive target share, where he's not sharing a target share with a guy like Jamar Chase, he has some serious potential to break out as, a true wide receiver 1 in fantasy and dynasty football as well. And if we take a look at his career in terms of the advanced statistics, his target rate, his yards per route run, his catch percentage, his catch rate over expected, his receiving EPA, it's all extremely consistent, and you're not really seeing any dips year to year. So when you see him break out this year, it's literally same old T. Higgins. He's just getting more targets. So we've seen every single, like a per route run or per target, stay very similar. But this year, the only difference is he's seeing a bigger target percentage in a passing offense that's passing even more than it usually is. So if you find T. Higgins on a team who's going to throw the ball, he's going to become an alpha, and he's going to score even more points than he did this past season, in my opinion. So I think wide receiver 15, although it makes sense where he's ranked, I think it's a really good value play to invest in for this next season and in the future moving forward, next 2-3 years, which is, how you should be playing Dynasty. So when you look at value adjacent players according to Keep Trade Cut, we're looking at guys like Kyler Murray, and this is obviously super flex. Kyler Murray, 2026 early first round pick, Kyren Williams, and Rashee Rice. Me personally, I think I'm taking T. Higgins over all of those guys. Kyler Murray struggled as a passer this past season. 2026 early first might be the only thing I would hesitate with, because there are a lot of good quarterbacks coming out in the next class. You got, Arch, Nico, and Drew Allar after he's going back to Penn State. And then Kyren Williams, you never know. The Rams running back room is a revolving door, so you never really know who's going to be RB1 in that situation. And then Rashee Rice is another guy I would hesitate with, just because, he is a year younger and he's in a better offense, in my opinion. When Rashee was healthy, he was scoring a ton of fantasy points. But, if T. Higgins finds himself in an offense where they throw the ball a lot and he is the alpha, I would take him over Rashee Rice 10 times out of 10. Another wide receiver that I really like moving into the 2025 season is Drake London. As we saw Michael Penix take over this offense after they benched Kirk Cousins, Drake London continuously saw more and more targets each week. He started with 8 targets, and that was in a blowout win when he only ran 20 routes. 13 targets in a loss to the Commanders where, they threw the ball a lot of times, 36 times. And then 18 targets, which was almost half of routes that he ran. He saw a considerable amount of targets when Michael Penix took over, which is something that he did see with Kirk Cousins, but it wasn't as consistent with Kirk Cousins. With Michael Penix, he converted those targets much better. 5 catches in the win against the Giants, 7 catches in the loss against the Commanders, and 10 with 2 scores against the Panthers. Now, Drake London is someone you would spend a little more capital on, as he is the wide receiver 9 currently on Keep Trade Cut, but he's also the 4th youngest guy in the top 10. He's still only 23.5 years old. He's 23 and a half years old, which is younger than guys like Puka Nacua, younger than guys like CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. He's younger than all those guys, and he has a young quarterback who clearly has chemistry with him. And in terms of the advanced statistics, nothing has really changed for Drake London, aside from the amount of targets that he's getting in this offense. Right now on Keep Trade Cut, some fantasy adjacent valued players are guys like Drake May, CJ Stroud from the quarterback position, Trey McBride, Jordan Love as well, and then JSN is the next highest ranked receiver. I think Drake London and JSN are very value adjacent dynasty receivers. You know, JSN is also a young guy who's kind of taking over the receiver room for his offense, but you know, you can still consider DK Metcalf as wide receiver one, even though JSN probably in terms of targets is the wide receiver one moving forward. Drake London is that alpha receiver in the Falcons offense, and there really isn't any competition. You know, you have Darnell Mooney, but he's not seeing the target share that Drake London is. And with Michael Penix taking over, you can see the clear favoritism that he has for Drake London. Even though Mooney's still getting action, Drake London is the guy that they're going to go to in the red zone. He's going to get more red zone targets. He's going to score more touchdowns than a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigma. Now, I would still lean towards guys like Nico Collins and CeeDee Lamb at the wide receiver position, but Drake London, if you can get stock in him, he's a very good piece moving forward. Now, another guy who I think this offseason is going to be getting a ton of buzz is Rome Odunze for the Chicago Bears. Still hasn't turned 23. Keenan Allen is going to be leaving in free agency, and that is a ton of targets that are going to be taken over by Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and potentially another receiver they may draft or go after in free agency. I'm not really sure Tyler Scott is the guy, so you're going to see a lot of these targets go to Odunze and DJ Moore. In his rookie year, Odunze ran almost 600 routes and got over 100 targets, only converted 54 of them because of, you know, poor accuracy from Caleb Williams. I think in 2025 there can only be improvements. He was solid at times, but for the most part too inconsistent to start week to week in fantasy. But like I said, there is a lot of targets to be made up next season with the departure of Keenan Allen. He had 121 targets, and he did miss 2 games. So that's over 8 targets a game that need to be dispersed elsewhere if they continue to pass at the rate which they will. You know, the Bears aren't the best team, so most of the time they should be playing from behind or at least in close games, which means they will be throwing the ball more often than not, which means a lot of targets for their receiving core, which is another reason why I think DJ Moore is a good value buy. You know, with his age, you should be able to get him for a little cheaper. And, you know, he's still expensive, but I really like Rome Odunze moving forward because I think he's going to be a centerpiece of the offense within the next 2 to 3 years, which is the window that you should be looking at, especially in Dynasty. But they're ranking him around a mid-first in 2025, or Josh Jacobs, Zay Flowers, which I think I would lean Odunze in every scenario there. If I got offered 1-for-1, I would probably lean Odunze, especially if I was rebuilding. The only hesitation is that mid-first, you know, where would that be in the draft? Because, you know, you can get guys like Luther Burden, and maybe he gets drafted into a better situation. You can get guys like Amariana Hampton, perhaps, depending on where that pick is, or Caleb Johnson, and a lot of that is, you know, landing spot, the situation that they're in, how much attention are they going to be getting in their offense. But I think I still lean towards Rome Odunze. Like I said, he got 100 targets and he was wide receiver 3 on the team. So what does that mean for him when he becomes wide receiver 2 this next season? That's why I think he's such a good buy. Currently, he is ranked as wide receiver 19, and that's behind guys like Devontae Smith, Jordan Addison, and ahead of Zay Flowers and George Pickens. These are all guys that have very high upside potential, but the floors are low. And I think Rome Odunze has that potential to be a very high floor, high ceiling player, which is where you find those wide receiver ones in Dynasty. Another guy that's a lot deeper down the rankings on Keep Trade Cut, who I think could break through given the right opportunity, is Ricky Pearsall. Going into next season, I think a lot of people are unsure where the 49ers are going to be going. In the offseason, they could deal guys like Deebo Samuel. I'm not up to date on what his contract situation is, but if I had to guess, they could ship him out to a wide receiver needy team because the 49ers did invest a first-round pick in Ricky Pearsall, and I think that's saying something to, how they value him. And I think we kind of saw that towards the end of the season. Now, I don't think he can be a one-for-one substitute. Obviously, Debo can do a lot of things that Pearsall can't. Debo's built like a running back, but he can catch like a receiver most of the time. Pearsall isn't going to be able to be that gadget player that Debo is, but he has the potential to slot in to the offense and have that target share and produce in a similar way. Now, I do believe that Pearsall is going to be more of a boomer bust guy than the rest of these wide receivers that we're talking about in this video. As we saw in the middle of the season, after he made his debut, after the bye week, he had a couple weeks where he literally had 1 or 2 targets for 4 or 5 weeks in a row. From weeks 11 to weeks 14, he had a total of 5 targets. But when he got the bigger target share in the last 2 weeks of the season, you saw the receiver that they went out and drafted in the first round. You saw that talent, and he produced in a wide receiver 1 potential sort of way. So the curiosity peaks. What are they going to do with Ricky Pearsall in 2025? Is he going to continue to be that wide receiver 1 upside player in fantasy, or is he going to be the boomer bust player who puts up 0 5 times in a season and he just becomes the next Gabe Davis? Currently on Keep Trade Cut, he is valued at wide receiver 37, which is around guys like Tyreek Hill, Khalil Shakir, and value adjacent overall players Dalton Kincaid, Zach Charbonnet, Brian Robinson, and he is about a 2025 early second round pick. And that could be anyone from Tyler Warren to Jalen Milroe. It's pretty, there's a high variance in what a 2025 early second could be this year because there's so many guys who are around that skill level. So it really depends on, what your team needs, but Ricky Pearsall is a very interesting player to watch as this offseason progresses. And I think you could see his value increasing substantially, especially if they deal Debo. Another very fascinating story this season was Jalen Coker for the Carolina Panthers, undrafted wide receiver out of Holy Cross, kind of broke out and became the rookie receiver in the Carolina Panthers offense, even outperforming guys like Xavier Legette. He took the wide receiver 2 role behind Adam Thielen when he was healthy, but most of the receivers in the Carolina wide receiver room kind of were hurt here and there, except for guys like Xavier Legette. Jalen Coker missed substantial time. He only played 11 games, started in 4, and Thielen, I'm not sure how many games he started off the top of my head, but he missed some time due to injury as well. But Jalen Coker, in the games that he did play, was pretty effective. His catch rate was about 70%, which is 11% over expected. His receiving EPA was comparable to guys like T. Higgins. His yards after catch was pretty good. About a third of his yards were after the catch. We saw this Carolina wide receiver room be labeled as the worst in the league, and the advanced stats definitely backed that up. But Jalen Coker was a bright spot, and I truly believe that he has the ability to produce at the NFL level. His advanced stats prove that. His separation is elite in terms of yards of separation per route run. Now on Keep Trade Cut, he is valued as the wide receiver 54, and you can almost get him for nothing at this point. Some value adjacent players, guys like Jalen Warren, Matt Stafford, who is, on the final leg of his career in a Superflex league, that could be an easy flip. Pat Freiermuth, Blake Corum, Travis Kelce, Adonai Mitchell. If you're a rebuilding team and you have these vets, it doesn't hurt to throw a dart at the board and take a shot at Jalen Coker. The worst that can happen is, he's a flex play when you're desperate at the very worst. I'm interested to see how Xavier Legette develops because that could affect Jalen Coker, and I'm interested to see what happens with Adam Thielen in the offseason. I'm not sure what his contract is if he's still with the team through the 2025 season, but he's an older guy and he has been injured a lot in the past few seasons, so you wonder what's in the cards for him and how that might affect Jalen Coker. Those were 5 wide receivers that I think are undervalued and could be potential candidates to break out in a sense, but just play above where they're ranked in 2025. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more content similar. I'll be making a running back video very similar to this one, so be on the lookout for that. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.